Hey team, Mike here at After 40 Fitness and after40fitness.ca. Going to tackle a topic today about tracking calories. Do you track? Do you track your macros? Do you track your calories? That rages every day. And because there's still that debate about whether calories matter, then people will turn around and say, then what's the point of tracking them? Right? There's no point in tracking calories. Calories don't matter. Calories don't exist. So much dogma, so much rhetoric, opinion, and conjecture around this topic. And so I wanted to delve into just tracking itself. Is there a benefit to tracking? And I'll tell you what drove this was just the other day. I was in a Facebook forum, in a social media forum, and somebody made the comment, they were talking about tracking, and one person said, I love tracking. I love knowing my food intake, whether it's calories and macros, right? Protein, fats, and carbs. And the other person said, no, I don't want that rule my life. I don't want the stress of constantly having to track food. I actually read that and laughed. I mean, I snickered out loud. I kid you not. I mean, can you imagine that all of a sudden, because someone says they use Carb Manager, MyFitnessPal, Chronometer, or one of the other plethora of tracking tools, that somehow now that's stressful, or somehow now that rules their lives? Like, talk about history. You know the term histrionics? Histrionics is just exaggeration. It's unnecessarily making something mean more than it needs to. If all of a sudden now I pull out my phone and I spend 30 seconds logging my protein shake, my chicken and vegetables, whatever it is I'm eating, my 3 hamburger patties that got cheese and bacon on top, then all of a sudden that's ruling my life. All of a sudden I'm a slave. Oh my God, stupid. Like, give your head a shake, whoever. If you say that, shame on you. Histrionics have no place in a biological, physiological conversation. Okay, so let's talk though about tracking. Is there a benefit to tracking, to knowing your calories? Well, I got some information I want to share with you, but before I do, if this is your first time to my channel, or you haven't yet, please do subscribe. So if you inherently eat in a deficit and you can lose some fat, lose some weight, did you do okay? Sure. Does that negate the value of tracking calories? Shoot, no. Stop it. The majority of people, I'm about to prove it to you with some science, a couple of studies, the majority of people would benefit from tracking. Let me get right into it. This first study is in the Journal of Diabetes Care. It's called A Comparison of Self-Reported Energy Intake with Total Energy Expenditure Estimated by an Accelerometer and Basal Metabolic Rate in Women with Type 2 Diabetes. Interesting. Okay, so this is relevant. Women, but in this case they had Type 2 diabetes. And notice the objective is to compare energy intake and total expenditure based on accelerometer and BMR. So they're going to do a dietary data assessment of what people think they're ingesting versus what they really are. Oh, this is going to be interesting. Participants on average were 59. Okay, so it's relevant because they're women, they're 59, they're menopausal. Okay, you would assume that with an average age of 59. And notice average BMI of 35. So all overweight and or obese with 10 and a half years of diabetes. Okay, so interesting. This is a good segment. Okay, these are people that are relevant. If there's a use case that's going to be appropriate, it's this one. The mean energy intake was 1,300 calories a day. Okay, so this is what these women thought they were ingesting. It was about 1,300. And mean EI to total daily expenditure, these were the two barometers, okay? What was their energy intake that they thought versus their total daily energy intake? And again, EI to BMR against their basal metabolic rate. And what it turned out to be was when they did these accelerometers and calorimetry testing to see what these women were actually burning per day, that's total daily energy, total energy expenditure is how many calories you burn, not just at rest, but also doing your daily chores, activities, walking, stairs, chasing the kids around the house with a pillow, or whatever else you do with your kids. And exercise, if at all, is total energy expenditure. BMR, so EI to BMR, is when you're not exercising, just to live. Just to walk around your house and do nothing else. Let's call that your BMR. Technically, your BMR is if you laid in bed all day just to survive, is your basal metabolic rate. But those are the two. Now, notice the mean EI that they calculated was 1,300 calories a day, which was 0.65 compared to their total daily energy expenditure and 0.88 against their metabolic rate. So in both cases, they were well off. Now, by the way, I should have mentioned these women, despite being overweight and diabetic, were weight stable. So these women weren't fluctuating. Here's the point. These women weren't fluctuating up and down. But when they were asked to estimate their calories, they estimated 1,300 as an average. And yet, Here's the gotcha. Their total energy expenditure, you can see that their number of, if they're, by the way, let's be really clear. If they're eating 1,300 calories a day and their total energy expenditure between all the things they do in an average day is let's call that X. They're eating Y and the difference is 1/3. Are they truly eating 1,300 calories a day? And you need to say, no, of course not. They're actually eating closer to 2,000. If I actually did the math on an additional 1/3, then that means 1,300 is 2/3. You got to be right around 1,900 calories to be maintenance at total energy expenditure. 1,900 is what they're actually eating. They reported 1,300 because they didn't know they weren't tracking. All right? Oh, I hope that's a good takeaway for you. Among the 185 subjects who completed the dietary data, 81% were classified as energy underreporters using the total energy expenditure ratio cutoff, and 60%, 58%, were classified as energy underreporters using the EI to BMR. Okay, so 81% against total underreporters, only 20% were close. That meant that 80% of them were underestimating their calories. They thought they were eating 1,300 and they were, chances are, eating closer to 1,800 or 1,900. What a takeaway. Okay, and there's the image showing it. Okay, I hope you find this interesting. You'll notice then what it means, self-reported in blue, energy expenditure in orange, and you can see the gap. So again, if these women are weight stable, they're eating at maintenance. They're not in a surplus, so they're not gaining weight. They're not in a deficit, so they're not losing weight. And yet, they believe, because they're not using Chronometer, MyFitnessPal, right? They're just using a diary. They're just tracking on paper. You can see the gaps. In some cases, look at column 3. Some of these participants were off by 1,000 calories. Remember, these were averages we're talking about. So in some cases, some of these women were burning 3,000 calories a day and thought they were eating only 2,000. Well, if you did the math on that, right, think about it for a second. Any woman, any person for that matter, who eats 2,000 but is burning 3,000, that's a 1,000 calorie deficit per day. That's 7,000 calories a week. That should be, before we talk about hormones and the impact of hormones, that should be 2 pounds of loss per week. Has to be. They're in a 1,000 calorie deficit per day. All right? And yet these women are all weight stable. Unbelievable. Study number 2 is in the journal Diabetes Research from 2017, the effect of adherence to dietary tracking on weight loss. Okay, so the adherence to dietary tracking on weight loss. By the way, before I get into this study, I did see a study a while back, it just occurred to me, that did say that some women do have a cortisol, a stress response to tracking. So I will say this, if you're one of those people who truly finds tracking stressful, right, then you need to know you're having a cortisol response to it. There will be a cortisol response, and as you know, cortisol is one of the hormones that promotes fat storage. So I truly believe you are one of those few people, if you truly find it stressful, if you have a stress response where you feel sick or ill or lethargic, I don't even know what the issue would be. I don't experience it myself. To me, tracking is just a piece of cake. It takes 3 seconds, 30 seconds, and done. But if you do truly find it stressful, then you would probably be one of those people who wants to do it very sporadically. Maybe just pick a day. Okay, so it doesn't become chronic pathological cortisol, but once or twice, it happens sporadically throughout the day anyway. Our cortisol spikes and ebbs and flows. So you could get away with doing it a couple of days just to get a feel for what your calories are. I'm going to recommend that despite the cortisol impact. Nonetheless, an effect of adherence, according to the study of adherence to dietary tracking on weight loss. Now, notice 12 months. 12 months, didn't ask them to change their diet, just asked them to track their food intake for the duration of the study. Now, before I say anything else, what do you think happened? Don't change your diet. Don't change a darn thing. We don't care what you eat. Just do us a favor. Log everything that goes in your mouth. When and what it was. Now, what do you think happened? Well, you know by the title. Adherence to tracking causes weight loss. Isn't that interesting? Let's see it. The number of possible tracking days was divided to create 3 groups. Rare trackers, who didn't stick to the plan, not even 1/3 of the time. Inconsistent was between 1/3 and 2/3 of the year, right, of the days of the year. And consistent trackers didn't mean 100%, it meant more than 2/3 of the days. So what do you think the results were? Only consistent trackers had significant weight loss, notice 10 pounds. So the average loss of 10 pounds over the course of a year without doing anything different in their diet other than tracking. Now, what does that tell you? Obviously, tracking isn't some fat burning skill, right? It's not. You don't build up a sweat tracking. What it meant, though, was that they had to have then an associated, a bit of a knowledge curve, right? A bit of a learning curve that, oh my God, I'm eating crap. And only those then, therefore, that were consistent trackers had this epiphany, had this realization that, okay, I really need to eat better. So not being asked to, not being forced to, not being told to go on a diet, they still lost 10 pounds in a year. Go figure, all right? Notice around week 9 is when the holiday season started. Okay, so week 9 is Thanksgiving, and you can see that the top 3 lines all went up. In fact, they all gained. Those 3 lines all gained, so rare, inconsistent, and null, all gained between week 9 and week 33, which was June. So right around June 20th, week 33 is when they began to all drop. But notice the inconsistent and the rare didn't do very well at all, but the consistent, that bottom gray line, that consistent, it never even increased in week 9, beginning of Thanksgiving, and it decreased the most, again, right down to 10 pounds as an average loss. Profound. Okay, if you're not getting a lesson here that tracking is important, tracking is key, then I hope that's your takeaway today. I hope you sit back and you go, okay, all other things being equal, tracking what goes in my mouth, when and in what quantity, is going to have an impact, a consistent impact according to this study. All right, so I hope that's relevant to you. I'm going to finish with one more study. And I thought this was a neat one as well. Notice this is from the Journal of Behavioral Medicine from just last year, 2020, June of 2020. Consistent self-monitoring in a commercial app-based intervention for weight loss results of a randomized trial. Another example, great trial. In this case, they're doing what you and I do. They're using a smartphone app, a commercial-based app. Okay, it could have been, in fact, in this case, just so you know, it was MyFitnessPal. I'll show you that in just a second. All right, so interesting. Self-monitoring is a strong predictor of success in lifestyle interventions for obesity. The 12-week intervention focused on daily self-monitoring of diet and body weight in a commercial app, MyFitnessPal. 100 people between the ages of 21 and 65. BMI, they were all heavy. They weren't skinny people. These were all overweight to obese. Notice the BMI of 25 to 45 indicates that 25 being overweight and roughly about 30 to 33, depending on who you ask, is the barometer at which point you flip over to obese. They were categorized as consistent trackers if they tracked 6 or 7 days out of 7 for at least 75% of the 12 weeks. 1/4, notice, of 100 people, only 25% did it. Can you imagine? How tough is it to track for 12 weeks? And yet, for 12 weeks, only 25 people out of the 100 could do it. Were classified based on checking their journal, checking MyFitnessPal, were able to consistently do it. What did the results were? Consistent tracking was associated with greater weight change than inconsistent at 1 month, and the difference was only a kilogram. But notice, 1 month, a kilogram difference, 1.11 kilogram, which is roughly 2.5 pounds for you Americans. All right, good start. And then at 3 months, 2.42 kilograms, call that 5-pound difference at the 3-month mark. Amazing. What a difference. No other difference, again, other than tracking. Should you track? Seems to be a prudent idea. Do you need to? No. That's all we're talking about is tracking. And tracking seems to consistently have the ability to improve your results if fat loss is your goal. Was there any other takeaway? Yes, over 3 times as many consistent trackers achieved greater than 5% loss at the 3-month mark. Okay, get that. Over 3 times as many. So the goal was, I didn't mention this before, the goal was to lose 5%. 3 times as many people were able to do it just by tracking. Never mind the diet, never mind the program. I didn't say keto, Atkins, low carb. I didn't say intermittent fasting. Whatever it was consistent across the group, and yet 3 times as many did it with consistent tracking. Would you like a 300% better chance of reaching your goal? At 3 times is 300% better chance. Introduce tracking. Be consistent, be diligent, be dogmatic, be religious, be orthodox about your tracking. You'll have a much better chance. And notice 48% of those that were consistent trackers did it versus only 13%. Well, they say 3 times as many. 3 times 13 is only 39. It's actually much closer to 4 times. At the end of the day, folks, I don't see how we can not want to track. Okay, I think it's so profound. Successful participants didn't just say they would keep a food log, they actually did it. In all 3 groups, those who were most diligent in tracking each day lost the most weight. By contrast, past research has shown that people often start with a goal of recording, but fail to continue to do so. There it is. That's 4 for 4. 4 for 4 showing that if your goal is to lose weight, then tracking is in your best interest. So, again, is it stressful? Figure out how to deal with that. track and then go right over and do a downward dog and do some yoga and Pilates. Figure out how to manage your stress. Start taking a little bit of ashwagandha, whatever you need to do. But don't think for a second you can escape this reality. The reality is, if you want to do well, tracking is key. Right? I hope on that note you got some good value out of this video. I just share it. If someone tells you that the tracking is not needed, absolutely not needed. Does it benefit you? Is it in your best interest? 100%. Don't argue. You know you can't. All right. On that note, I hope you appreciate that. Again, don't forget to hit the like button for this video if you enjoyed that content or any content in this space, and share this one. Punch the like button, share the video, subscribe to the video. And on that note, folks, thank you so much for your time. I'll see you in the next one.